Africa.
Beloz, why are you the talk? Not so we get this program.
Now we not the husband material.
No, we not husband material.
Ole,
Never
Sam,
sure.
are we good to go? And please, I would like you to speak English. Please. I don't.
Now, we always hear that the best story is a love story. This is a story about growing up in Sierra Leone, back in the 80s and 90s, the age of the Walkman, the rotary phone, and the video cassette player, an era long before social media and smartphones. Zem? That's it. I don't remember what mark I got. Do you by any chance remember what mark you got?
I do.
What did you get? I know I was either few numbers behind you or in front in front of you. Good day, and welcome to yet another episode of Johnny's 232. This is my story. I go by the name Beloz, officially Ibrahim Yusuf Bangura, and over the past couple of weeks, I have been inviting you into my life to talk about the things that have molded me into the person I am. I've had friends come along this journey, talk about our shared experiences, and I wanted to save this episode for this time. So people always talk about day ones, and I happen to have quite a few day ones, but then today I am here with the original day one. The day one that all the other day ones are well aware of, and they know, yes, this person has been with me, I think I can conveniently say, my whole life. Today I am joined by my very good friend, Mrs. Zemzem Ali. You're welcome, Zem.
Mrs.
You're Miss.
Miss. Thank you.
So, what year was it? So I can't quite remember. I know it was Tower Hill Kindergarten. I have never remembered if it was nursery or reception. So maybe you will remember. What's the first recollection?
I think reception.
And that was Miss Campbell's
Yes.
class. Yes, that was a lifetime ago.
Yes.
You know, it probably was still the 80s, wasn't it? Was it 80s or 90s?
Maybe early 90s.
So let me see if we have the same memories from that time. When you think of reception, all those years, what's the first memory that comes to mind?
Miss Campbell.
What about Miss Campbell?
I think she was very patient with us in terms of that. I think that's where you learn how to write.
Yeah.
That's where you start writing. And I know she was very patient, but she was also very jovial. So the class was lively.
It's interesting you remember that. So my memory of Miss Campbell is the fingernails.
Of course.
Because she used to check for the fingernails, and I think that's where I developed this habit of I'm always picking my fingernails, filing my fingernails, because that was the thing. We used to
Show her.
yes, put the fingernails on the table, and your fingernails need to be clean. And woe betide your parents did not, because at that age I'm sure we were not responsible for cleaning our fingernails. Woe betide your fingernails were not cleaned by your parents, you would get into trouble with Miss Campbell. Interesting story. I ran into her quite recently after so many years, and she's still, she's older now, but she still does look the same.
Yeah.
She's still that size
I agree.
and all of that.
I agree.
But Tower Hill Kindergarten in general, what's your fondest memory of Tower Hill Kindergarten?
Wow.
Yeah.
I think there are many, but I think class 2 stood out. We were taught by Solange,
Miss Allen, Solange.
And I think she'd been away from Sierra Leone for a bit, so she came with sort of like a very different style.
She was different.
She coordinated my very first boyfriend experience, and that was in class 2. So yeah, she was really cool. I would say if you ask me what stood out the most, it was her because of her very different style of teaching. But I think Toys had very many fond memories.
You know, and it's interesting you talk about Solange because, you know, back then she looked like such a grown-up, but now we're all grown. You meet her,
She was very young when she came to
and she's not like old, and you realize, okay, that's probably how kids see us now. I think, you know, every time I go to Tower Hill, it may not be because of the age, it just might be because of my size, but every time I walk around and they're like, he came to this school, and the kids are like,
yes, they
oh
see
my
us.
goodness.
My son just told me I was born in 1820 something. That's how old he sees me. They do see us as ancient.
Yeah, and you know, you go back to the school and there's so many memories we made there running around, all the running we did and everything. And now it feels like such a small space. You realize how, you know, I guess how tiny we were because now you walk in, you realize this is not a big space at all.
No, but I think there are a few differences. We had very small class numbers as
True.
well. So it was a bigger space because in class 6 we were like 12 people.
Okay.
We weren't that many in class compared to now. They have like 30 children in class. So the space obviously is smaller when you go like lunchtime.
So do you know what I have no recollection of? I know we went from class 2 to class 4. Did we go from 4 to 6? I have no recollection of class 5. I really do not remember class 5. I know class 5 was the class, it was the class right in front of
Really?
Mrs. Nichols' class.
We went to class 5, dude.
We did?
Yes. Clearly it wasn't memorable for you. But we
I have
did.
no recollection of that, but
She
I
was
do.
Miss George. We were taught by Miss
So
George.
there are several, I feel like there were several.
2. There was the nursery 2 Mrs. George and then the class 5 Miss George.
Okay. And then there was class 6. So class 6, I remember, stands out for so many reasons. And I think, interestingly enough, most of, I don't know if it's the same with you, but I feel like all of those people we were in class with in class 6, some way, somehow, we've still kept track of, because, you know, they're even people like the Gerald O'Reillys, the name is there, the Olatunji Hamiltons and all that, people who have gone to different places, different spaces, but we still remember them. I think the only person I potentially remember from way back, of course, there's Melvin Finney.
I know you were going to talk about
Yeah, there's Melvin Finney. I don't think Gerald was in class 6 with us, but I remember
He came.
Gerald.
He joined us, but then he left. I think he went to Canada or something.
Yeah. And then, so class 6, we did the NPSE. And it's interesting how, I mean, NPSE, I feel, has changed, maybe not in so many ways, but I mean, back in the day, it was, I feel it was such a strange and weird experience, in the sense it was the first examination outside of that our bubble, outside of that our cocoon. I think I remember taking, so I've never known, there are different examination centers, and I know I was at FSSG. I think we were at FSSG.
Yes.
We were. I don't remember what mark I got. Do you by any chance remember what mark you got?
I do.
What did you get? I know I was either few numbers behind you or in front in front of you.
I got 336.
Okay, well, I was somewhere there. I'm sure I was.
Yeah, not very far behind. Yeah.
Because that was the thing, you know, some way, somehow. So I think an interesting part of this story, of this journey, of this conversation is also some way, somehow, probably because of a lot of interactions, but we were always, you know, the same grade, but was never really ever a competition, more a thing of, if I had messed up, and, you know, your mom would know that, Zem has messed up herself. And if my mom finds out, you know, you hadn't done so well, I was like, okay, yeah, Ibrahim is home.
the
This
same.
result is definitely
Yes.
not going to be, it's not going to be any better. Mrs. Nicole, I think, I don't know, but somehow, I don't know if it was because we spent so much time in the class and then we did the extra lessons with her.
Yeah.
But that is the primary school teacher that I think, perhaps for me, had the most impact on who I am, just because we spent such a long time with Mrs. Nicole, and she was adorable.
She was good.
She was. I think those.
But I think it's really because we spent so much time at her house.
We did on Sakilo Road. Yes, we spent a lot of time with Mrs. Nicole.
Yeah.
You know, and then so we went through that phase. You know, all the people we met and everything, and then it was an interesting time to be a kid. So one of the things I think, so now we're both parents, and we constantly struggle, you know, with our kids and constantly being on these gadgets, on tablets and everything. And remember growing up in an era where, you know, we did not have all that. Just the other day I was thinking about it, and it dawned on me that we lived in an era where we were the remote controls. There was no remote control for the TV. You wanted to change the channel.
You walked to it.
You walked to the channel, you changed it. That was an era where there was no flat screen TV. You know, I was watching a program the other day, and, you know, the Gen Z kids that they were interviewing had no idea what the rotary phone was. You know, the phone you put your finger in and you just...
Dial, yeah.
And our parents would padlock it.
I was telling that to my son not so long ago.
And they would lock the phone, and we learned to tap. You hold the phone, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And
Yeah.
those were the days. Do you think, so now looking back, reflecting, in terms of experiences and childhood experiences, do you think that was a better time, or now is a better time?
I mean, for who? For us or the kids? Because, I mean, those are two different times. So, if we had grown up in this time, is what you're asking?
Yes.
You know what? I don't know.
Because I feel so, but then we think about it, and we grew up in an era where we had all these social interactions, but then here we are, interestingly, yourself being quite the introvert, myself being quite the extroverted introvert, but we grew up in an era where we had to interact with other people. We had to play games. That was what...
That's true.
That was the thing. So sometimes I wonder if we had grown up in this era where, yeah, we're always just on the screen and everything, we probably would have turned into recluses. Maybe not. Who knows?
I think a hybrid of that time and this time would have been good, because there are things about this generation, and I must say we're the enablers, because, I mean, they're our kids. And sometimes I watch them and I think there's a gap between us and them in terms of I think our parents taught us to be really resilient and prepared for.
Yeah.
Because you really had to fight for things. You had to learn how to tap the phone to make a call. You wanted a girlfriend, you really had to trek to their house. Otherwise, I mean, you're not talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You learned how to write letters, to communicate.
Yeah.
And you learned generally to
no
be
dates but love in action. that was a thing.
You wrote letters, and now everything is at their disposal. So it sort of makes them a little spoiled than we are. You know, I think we're more, if we don't have things we can do without. But in fact, I mean, they said the other day, like, my mother gave you one pair of shoes, one pair of sneakers for the school year.
Yep.
And that was that. You had to make do, and one sandals, and you had to make do with that. Now our children are like a year old. My niece has a more comprehensive shoe rack than mine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So different eras, but our parents did at the time what they had in their, you know, in their view.
So now we have all, I want to talk about, you know, so now we're in the era of podcasts, you know, Spotify and Apple Music and everything. We came from a time when there were Walkmans and Discmans so you had a Walkman, did you? Because it was a thing. And then we transitioned to the Discman. And the Discman would have, Lord, the size of that thing. And it came with a pouch. So now everything goes in your pocket. It came with that really big pouch, and it would skip. You scratch, and it's crazy. But you think about it and you reflect on how far technology has come, and just, I was driving the other day and it dawned on me that, wow, like we lived in ancient of times. If you think about it.
It was fun, come on.
It was. It was.
You wanted music, you had to. Which would they say? Born. You get for born to the.
You get
CD.
for Bondi plates.
Yeah.
But this was after the cassettes. You play the cassette rap, and you put the pen inside it, and yes. And if you really like the cassette and it all rap, you get for open them.
Yes.
And fix all of that, and that was.
You actually had to go after the things you wanted. It didn't come to you easy, and there's something to be said for that.
True.
There are things about technology I love, but I think it does make things sometimes too easy.
So I want to, because it was one of the places, I want to talk about, oh God, what's the address? Is it 38A Moritown Road? Macaulay Street. Yes, it was one of the few places my mom would let me go. Same
as your house.
And it was different for me because that was a place where I went and there were people. In my house, I was there. I was an only child. It was just my parents, the people working around the house and me, the only child. And I got to go to your house and there was
kids all around.
Everybody. Yeah. How many of those people are you still in touch with?
Firstly, disclaimer, I'm really bad at keeping in touch, but I would say when we see, it's always like a really good reunion. When we see, it's very rare, but we see from time to time.
And your mom is still at the house so many memories, so many fond memories, so many fond memories in that house. But then we went through that phase, we transitioned, and all the things that were happening in Sierra Leone, and we had a childhood where we lived some of it here, and then we lived some in other countries. So I was in Guinea, you went off to Gambia. What was the initial transition like? Because I think as a child, this was where you had everybody and everything, and then may have been. So now we've moved around so many places, lived in different countries, come back and forth and all of that. But that was the first moving out of Sierra Leone. Yes, what was that like?
Well, first, let me say, I think most of these things, now I look back and I think I understand even better what it was like then than when I was in it, if you know what I mean. But it was interesting. When we went to Banjul, we arrived and all of us had to rent first one room.
Yep.
And we were all in that room.
Yep.
And every day, my mother and my father would get up and they'd dress us and they'd go in different directions. We walked that city looking for a place to live, But looking back, what I take from that a lot is I watched my parents build from nothing,
yeah.
And they could. So it shows me the possibility of sometimes we're afraid to change, and that always tells me it's something I go back to a lot. Because I watched us move to a house where there were like plastic chairs until we had real chairs, until we had a television, until we had a car.
Bit by bit.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they really built from nothing, and it's possible. So now I look back at it and I see they put us in like good schools that they didn't joke about. So back then it was a little destabilizing, but I mean, when we were kids, you do what your parents say. You don't really question it quite a lot.
True.
So we woke up in the morning, we went to find houses. When we got the house, it was time for school. You went to school, and sometimes you think about your friends, but this is where you are now. And
Yeah.
in a way, you know.
Similar experiences, because so we went to Guinea. We fled. We went to Guinea on a boat, on a fishing trawler. It was such a horrific experience. First time I landed, I was I could get seasick and all of that. Had to spend. We got to the border. The border had closed. We had to spend the night, in the waters. It was turbulent, and just that same experience. So first, it was a hotel. We had 2 hotel rooms where, the dads were in one room and the moms and the kids were in another room, and then eventually, started looking for houses. But then, there was an uncle who had a relative somewhere in, I think it was called Matoto in Conakry. So we moved there. Was with my uncle. Wasn't with my parents or anything. Eventually got a house, same plastic chairs and all of that. That was the era of telecenters.
Yes.
That was actually a thing. You had to go
and pay.
You pay money. They
call.
assign a booth to you. You make a call and everything, and call back home, find out what's happening, and eventually, our parents built. I think that was partly because slow transition, but that was also a very uncertain period because nobody really knew, okay, is this going to be 1 month, 2 months, do we want the kids to start school? Yeah. So I think the moment we got into school, it was like, okay, this is going to be at least.
Let's start making
this is one academic year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. I reflect and I think about how that is a time and an era that our kids, and perhaps the kids who came immediately after us, will not know. And there's a good thing in that, because yes, we had such an amazing childhood in Sierra Leone, but then there were intervals of instability and parents running to pick you up in the school, or turning up and realizing, especially those of us who had parents who would drop us off really early. Mm-hmm. My mom, as you know, has always hated being late. Mami Bangura will go left also hour, and I'm thinking,
my mom is the same.
Lord, why are they go school this hour? Why? And you would get there and realize there's something happening in the city, so
you have to turn around.
Yes, they have to turn around and take you back home and all of that. But in spite of that, I would say we had, pretty amazing childhood. Now, if you have to compare, you have to look, where do you think you have the fondest memories? Is it in Sierra Leone, or it's because you lived in Gambia for much longer? So I was in Guinea for 9 months and came back, and you did, Lord knows, how many years did you guys do in the Gambia?
Well, first we went for a year, and then we came back when we went to Form 3.
Okay.
And then in 1999, the war happened again, and then we left, and I came back in 2003. So I was there for a bit.
I'm not going to try to calculate the years. As you know, my maths maths has always been sketchy.
But I don't know, fondest memories is sort of, you're talking timelines here. I left here when I was 11?
Mm-hmm.
And I came back when I was 17, 16. So I grew up for the most part there. So I have really fond memories there. But here as well, they're really good memories, like the maze.
Yeah.
And
yes.
Zainab got me my very first geometry set. That is like a really fond memory.
That's something my mom would get somebody.
Yes, and a very expensive perfume, So there are fond memories here and there here, and us being on the phone, forever after school, and my mom calling downstairs.
The phone bills we must have racked up for our parents.
My mom would call downstairs to say, "Una tell them for put the phone down." So there are fond memories there. We used to talk a lot after school. Mm-hmm. But in terms of where I properly grew up into myself, I would say it's in Gambia. So I have lots of fond memories there.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So, you're just talking about how much time we spent talking on the phone after school and everything. And in the intro, I said this is the original day one. If somebody, so I have a couple of questions. If somebody walks up to you and says, I hear you're friends with Ibrahim or Beloz. Tell me about him.
On camera?
Yes. It can't be that bad, Zem. It cannot be that bad. But who am I from your perspective?
This is going to be a very modified version of who I think you are, but I think you know what I think about you. First, I think you have this big personality, but really you're a very shy person.
Let people know that, please.
Yes, please. You have a big heart, but you're very soft but hard on the outside.
Well, it comes with a size. I have to have a big heart.
You're very sensitive. And you're very smart. You're older than your years. It's why we're still friends, I think.
I'm smart, aren't I?
Sometimes.
Sierra
I'm smarter than you, but...
Sierra Leone has never made me feel smart. Well, schooling in Sierra Leone has never made me feel smart.
I'm smarter than you, a little bit, but...
Remains to be seen.
But yeah, you're a very smart person, and you're wiser than your years, and you're great to talk to. I think it's why you have all these friends that think they're very close to you.
You say that like that's such a bad thing. Wow. Wow, Zem. So I know, and this is a conversation I like to have. I know that there's this thing they say about, people come into your life and blah, 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 and then, they move out, and there's a quote somewhere, about something like that. But this is the one friendship, you're the one friend that has stayed with me through all the different phases in life, that has, put up with all my BS. Very many thanks for that. I might not have always been the best of friends, but I do appreciate that, you've stuck with me all these years. What is it you think that accounts for that? And this from the perspective of long-lasting friendships. What do you think? Because we don't have that many people that we've journeyed with since reception.
And are still close.
Yeah.
Well, firstly, I'm a great friend. I
Obviously.
do put up with a lot of your nonsenses. But I think it's both of us understanding the basis of any relationship. I always say there are a few basics that run across work relationships, friendships, love relationships, and it is really acceptance, like total acceptance of the other person and their flaws, and I don't think there's much you would do that would shock me, or and I understand that I can call you out.
True.
I can say to you, this is
do.
BS. And, so I think it's acceptance of who you are, but also acceptance of who I am. And if maybe when we speak and we say we're close till now, people will think we talk every day, but we really don't.
Yeah.
It's just knowing that it can be 1 year or 6 months or 9 months, but I can call you, you can call me, and there's no, all this time you called me, or, you didn't invite me to your wedding. But here we are.
Oh Lord.
Yeah.
And yes, I forgot your birthday again. Since we lay complain now on camera, lay all the complain. I forgot your birthday
you
again.
Forgot my birthday, but
this year.
I think it's that, and I do think people you've known since your childhood, you have a higher tolerance for them than people you've just met. So there's a wide tolerance for you and your nonsenses. Plus, I love your mother. So I tolerate you, but it is true. I think it's just the long history. There's history, that we've seen all the different phases, and me and you have been there for each other in really complicated times.
Yeah,
and I think there's something to be said for that.
Absolutely, and I think that's not something people value enough. I think you said something that struck a chord. I find that most people equate friendships with, we constantly they talk. We always they talk and all of that. And in a weird way, I think we're both people who recognize that no, this person, it didn't
It
corner.
did, yeah.
Like this person, I might not always see this person, always talk. We go through, long spells where we don't communicate. But you look back and you recognize that, and for even what it is worth, that this is the one person. If all man afraid for tell me to na this life, I have that one person where, because it does happen me for man, or be nobody. Doesn't matter who I become in life. I know that there's that person who
will see me as I am. Yeah, I think there's that.
And give it to me raw and all of that, So just looking back, reflecting, is there anything from our childhood, that when you look back, you reflect, maybe something you did, a choice or something you wish you had a say about, because as you point out, we parents them. These days we have conversations with our kids. And my 2-year-old, like, we talk, we negotiate. I tell her don't do this. She's like, why not?
Why?
Yeah, I'm like, I almost want to tell her, come in, papa. That's why I say, ask me question. When you reflect, you look back. Is there anything you wish, you had a say in, or that you had done differently? And not just talking about early childhood, but right up to, whenever childhood
Come on,
ends.
I think everybody has that. If we all say, are there things we wish were different? Yes, but I'm a very different person. I'm all about the now. This is how it has happened. I mean, how do I want? Now I try to be more intentional and really about the steps I take and what I do. But is there anything I regret about my childhood? Maybe one very personal thing, but apart from that, in my adulthood, we move.
Indeed, we move. But finally, so I look at you, how far we have come, and I don't think as a person you have changed much. Or maybe because, I've been here so long. But there's people always say, people change and all of that. I think you have been the same person that you've always been, Zem. I like to tell people, and sometimes I get crazy, I talk about myself in the third person. I tell people there's Ibrahim, there's Beloz, So first and foremost, just before we wrap this up, do you think as a person over the years I have changed? And if you had to describe Ibrahim, how would you describe Ibrahim? And if you had to describe Beloz, how would you describe Beloz?
I am not trying to describe Beloz on camera, so we're leaving that out of here. If I had to describe Ibrahim, I would say also your fundamentals haven't changed. I just think now you're more intentional, because you're living your life as you told me when we were kids, but it is now you have
getting there, a few dreams still
I know, but
somewhere.
I mean, you're stepping into it. So I think it's just growing up. You become more intentional. You learn from, but your dreams have been the same.
They have been the same, and still out here chasing those dreams. And it's such a heartwarming conversation to have. I refuse to mention the age we're near now, where
we don't talk about that.
We're getting there, But I think just looking back, I just want to say, I'm glad that this friendship has lasted this long. I think it's good to have people who have come with you all the way, because you're certain of them going with you the distance, going all the way, So I guess, all my fondest memories, you're part and parcel of a lot of those memories. The other day I was on Capital Radio and I said Zem, and so Nikki was like, but we don't know Zem. A lot of people would not know Zem. I'm like, yeah, Zem is there. She's Zem not like public. And thank you for agreeing to do this.
Seriously.
I know this is not your...
You're very welcome.
This is not your usual habitat. But I'm happy we got to have this conversation. It's been good. And of course, looking forward to further conversations. And I promise that moving forward, I will not forget the birthday. It's now ingrained in my skull, June 19th.
Okay.
I'm never
Announce my
forgetting.
birthday to the world, sure.
I'm never forgetting that birthday. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here and thank you for coming along.
I'm happy to be here for you.
Thank you, Zem. This has been a conversation about childhood in Sierra Leone, growing up in Sierra Leone, shared experiences of growing up in the 80s and the 90s. A conversation with my day one, the original day one, Mrs. Mzem Ali. Now, it's been quite a journey, and you have now seen where this journey started. Well, there is a beginning much earlier than this beginning, but that's for another episode. If you have liked all the episodes you have watched, including this episode, remember to subscribe to the YouTube page, like, and share. And come along with me as I continue to tell my story on this journey called life. Thank you.